All right, the South Carolina women's basketball team in desperate need of some answers and need some answers in a hurry. We talk about all that and more. Locked on Gamecock starts right now.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Locked On Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marler, and we have a fantastic show for you. My voice is a little bit under the weather, so bear with me, but I appreciate you guys listening, and I appreciate you guys listening each and every day and making Locked On Gamecocks your first listen each and every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Remember, we're a free and available podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Today's episode, like I just said, right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com today for more. All right, let's get into the show. We're gonna break us down and we're gonna build us back up and talk about two things that are that happened today. And one of them sucks. You had the national spotlight on Colonial Life Arena yet again. And you had a South Carolina team that was coming off a pretty recent loss to Texas, and you get a UConn team, which is, let's face it, that is the preeminent, prominent, perennial, whatever P word you want to use, power in college basketball for women's basketball, and has been for several decades now. They are Ohio State, Bama, Notre Dame of women's college basketball. And they, even though South Carolina has been of late, that's like historically them and Tennessee, the biggest program in the country. They come to Columbia. You get a massive, massive Sunday showdown. You have College Game Day there. Plies was there. Shout out to Plies. You had just a massive, massive game with the eyes of the nation on you. It was a really cool day for women's basketball. It was a really cool day. You had the 1:00 start, UConn at South Carolina. Then you had, after that, you had LSU on the road at Texas. Just a really, really good day of women's basketball with four of the best teams in the country. Now, this game was a 4-7. You're at home. The atmosphere was electric. The game itself got out of hand. It just got away from you. And there's a lot of times, I think, with like games like this, you look at it and say you can throw away the tape. You can say whatever, we'll move on from it, we'll learn from it, or I'll use the baseball analogy because we're going to talk about baseball next. But I'll use the baseball analogy of, can't tell you how many times, if you have an 0-for-4 day, or you just have you're in a little bit of a slump, it's like, I don't even want to watch the at-bats. I don't want to go watch tape of this if it's just like an embarrassing day. Like, let's just move on, maybe take some early BP the next day, whatever. In this case, I don't think you can do that. I think it's such a bad loss and a befuddling and confusing and weird loss for so many reasons. Because, let's just call it what it is. You got your ass kicked at home. And guys, sometimes that happens. I think what's so odd about this is that South Carolina has put themselves on this pedestal of this elite, being an elite program in college basketball, where you just don't expect it. You expect that out of a lot of other teams. You expect that out of Tennessee nowadays sometimes. Like, sometimes you just have a team that is better than you. But in women's college basketball, you don't see a ton of these matchups where it's like two top 10 teams and one of them is just blowing the other one out, and especially on the road. I think what is most confusing here is like the Texas loss a couple weeks ago. You're like, all right, well, listen, you had this incredible run of however many straight wins in the SEC. Great. That's awesome. We all know it. We love it. It's fantastic. Well, here's the thing. In this year in the SEC, it's a little bit unlike some years past because it's not just you and LSU, right? It's not just you and Tennessee. It's not just like you and some like other good power team. Like, and don't get me wrong, the SEC is really deep in women's college basketball, but usually it's South Carolina and who? Like I'll compare it to football. Like, you have Georgia and Bama a lot of times, right? And then all of a sudden, it's like, all right, well, and you have a couple like 9-10 win teams, like whatever. This year, Georgia and Texas. You talk about South Carolina, Ole Miss, maybe Alabama, I guess, and some teams like that on the tier below it. Well, this year in the SEC, you don't have just 1 and 2. Texas is very, very good, as they showed today, beating another top 5 team. They beat South Carolina the other day. They go ahead and they beat LSU today after being down by 12 points with 5 minutes left in the third quarter. So you're not just competing with one other team to win the conference, but this is the deepest conference in women's college basketball. So it's already hard enough to win it, let alone go undefeated. But you were able to go undefeated in this conference for like the last 70 games or whatever it was, or 57 games. And then you lose that game on the road and you go, you know what? We'll just whatever. Like we still have like a great resume. We're still projected to be a 1 seed. Sunday afternoon, UConn's got to come to Colonial Life. And that's a team, or that's a place where you haven't lost since December of 2020. It's hard to come in there and win. You also, that same Texas team you lost to, you beat them by double digits the last time they came here, right? Like you don't lose in this building. Game day's there, like I said, top 10 matchup, Sports Center's coming, talking about it. Like it's a massive, massive game. And you come out and lay an egg like that. And so now you're like, well, we don't have the SEC wins in a row. You don't have the home win streak in a row, which is the 4th longest in women's college basketball history. That's gone. And now you're looking at it and you're like, well, we got 3 losses this season. And we had 3 over the past 2, I think 3 seasons, or 2 or 3 seasons combined. That sucks. That sucks. It's just a tough pill to swallow. Here's the thing. I talked about this after the Texas game, never wasting a loss. You've got to find a way to rally. You've got to find a way to rally. And here's why. Like you look at the game today. What South Carolina has been so great at, it's not just that they score and they have 10 McDonald's All-Americans, all kind of crap. They are out rebounding their opponents by almost 8 or 9 more rebounds a game than every game they play, or their opponent in every game. Today they got out rebounded by nearly 20. It was 48-29 on the boards in favor of UConn. You had multiple of their starters with over 15 points, double digits. And it wasn't just Paige Beckers. It was their whole team. The Fudd girl had 28. It just, and you haven't lost in this building since December 3rd, 2020. So yeah, it sucks. It's a huge, huge black eye on the season to an extent. Here's where I'm mainly concerned. And it's kind of a double-edged sword. One side of it's positive. But here's the thing. What concerns me is this. Going into this game, they finally released the top 16 seeds in the country. And as of today, South Carolina had the number 2 overall seed. And I think that makes sense. They were going to be – I don't think they're in the South region because it's in Birmingham. Somebody else was. But they have South Carolina would have been in the South region, I think. Or maybe still will be. I don't know. But you were the number 2 overall seed. You had a 1 seed in the tournament. Why that's important, and you guys know just as well as I do, you don't see a lot of crazy runs to the Final Four in women's basketball. There's some great teams when you get to the Elite Eight and Final Four, but you don't see a ton of Cinderella stories. I think last year Bama was a 4 seed. We've seen 11 seeds get there. We've seen 8, 9 seeds. What was the year? San Diego State was a 5 seed 2 years ago. There are some really good teams that'll make a run into the Final Four in the men's bracket. That doesn't really happen as much in the women's bracket. And you look at the last 5 Final Fours, right? And that excludes 2020 because there wasn't one during COVID year. In the last 5 Final Fours, you had only 3 of those 20 teams. You had 0 of those 20 teams that were below a 3 seed. Every single Final Four team was a 3 seed or higher. Only 4 of the 20. Only 4 were a 3 seed. It takes a lot to not be one of the 1 or 2 seeds to get there. And my question is South Carolina going to lose out on their 1 seed? And not whether, I don't think they deserve to necessarily. They're one of the best teams in the country, clearly. Early season loss to UCLA, but it wasn't a good loss. You lost by, and let's look at it real quick. You lost at that game, and keep in mind, it's a very long time ago. And the resume is still good, right? But UCLA on the road, you lost by 15. against Texas, right? On the road, you lose by 4. Then today you get beat by almost 30. And I think that's the problem with where, like, you look at like what's behind them. Texas is going to get a 1 seed, and you still have the rest of SEC play and the SEC tournament. So there's still time to make this up. But my concern goes to here. UCLA is going to be ahead of you. UCLA just lost to USC, Southern Cal. And everyone knows they have one of the best players in the country. She went off against them, against the UCLA game. They won by almost, I think they won by 10 in that game, like 80-70 or 81-71, whatever it was. So USC, Southern Cal, is sitting here at the 5 seed, the highest ranked 2 seed in the tournament. I worry they're going to take this spot away from South Carolina because, I mean, one, Juju's awesome. Like, she's incredible. And you get that kind of star power. I do believe they will try to get that in front of as many people as possible and get that team every advantage to get into the Final Four. Not saying they don't deserve it, and not saying any kind of conspiracy theory thing. But what I am saying is if it's between these 2 teams and one of them's hot right now and the other one's got a couple of losses where they've stumbled recently, and if South Carolina doesn't win the SEC tournament, I wouldn't be surprised because whoever does win the tournament will probably end up being LSU or Tennessee. Maybe Kentucky sneaks in there. I don't know, but like probably one of those teams, Texas or LSU, and they would probably end up getting a 1 seed. Right now, I think LSU is a 2 or 3 seed that they've had so far. I just worry that because of what's happened, you have to be concerned big picture of this thing slipping away. Not that it will. And Dawn Staley is a phenomenal coach. But this, right now, this is why you bring her all this extra money in the contract extension and believe in her to go out and be the best coach in college basketball. The wins are great, but winning masks deficiencies always. So it's a lot of stuff coming to light right now of where there needs to be improvement, what needs to be done. And it is an uncomfortably shaking loss. There's just no other way to put it. But you got to figure out a way to learn from it. You have to and move forward because I say this all the time about losses in college sports, with the way momentum is and the way these 18 to 22-year-old kids are. Today's loss cannot be the same reason, it can't be the reason you lose on Thursday. You cannot lose twice because of today, if that makes sense. All right, so we will be right back with more Locked On Gamecocks and continue next. All right, welcome back, guys. Appreciate you guys joining us. And before the break, we talked a lot about the women's team and the loss today and just how uncomfortable it was. We're going to get into some baseball talk and get some positive vibes going here because baseball had a really, really good weekend. But before we do that, I do want to tell you real quick about our friends at FanDuel. Listen, everyone knows it's NBA All-Star Weekend, or maybe you didn't know. I didn't find out until Saturday. It's NBA All-Star Weekend. That means we're in the second half of the season. And when the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. And there's no place to get in on the action more than FanDuel. Now, you guys have heard me talk about FanDuel a lot. You can hear me talk about them again. It's America's #1 sportsbook. And with FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. Listen, I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I never feel like I miss my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, let's get into the rest of today's show and talk about some positive things. All right. And that is the weekend that was. South Carolina baseball. 3-0 start. Paul Mainieri's era gets off to a very, very solid start. We're going to go through some of these right now. You played. Listen, it was Sacred Heart, not necessarily the toughest opponent, but there's a lot of positives that came out of this weekend and a lot to like from what the Gamecocks did. We can get into some of it right now. Listen, I'll say right now. So the Sunday game, you win 8-0. You had a fantastic, pitching performance. I'm trying to pull this up real quick. Bear with me. So I thought that was that part itself. Obviously, anytime you start off the season, and listen, every team plays cupcakes for the most part to start off the college baseball season. The grind of playing a college baseball season in the SEC is so much more difficult than even football, really, because it's just, listen, it's like a 60-plus game schedule. It is not easy to get through those games and go out and skate. Now, a little bit of concern on day one. You win 5-3. You end up backing up those next two games. You run rule them on Saturday in a 7-inning game at Founders, and then you win 18-0. So basically, you 5-3 to start the season. You get the dub. It's all that matters. But the next 2 days, your pitching came out and absolutely shoved. You win 22-0 combined. 22-0 combined in those next two games. Now, from there, looking at some of the start, Nathan Hall. I told you guys last year when they got this kid out of the portal. I believe it's Nathan Hall out of the portal. I think that kid's going to be a stud. I think that kid's going to be a stud. Off to a good start, 4 for 8 this weekend. Not a ton. There was not a ton of long balls. Ethan Petrie had one, which you kind of expect. He was 3 of 8 on the weekend. Let's see here. Kennedy Jones here, Henry Kazmar, both had 2 hits on the weekend. Not a ton offensively. You had 3 guys that end up after the weekend with 3 or more hits. You only had three players. It just so happens to be Nathan Hall, Nolan Noraki, and Ethan Petrie. I think one of the cool things about this lineup is going to be this. You know what you have. Like you might still have to do some juggling in the lineup. Like, it's one thing about opening day in college baseball, especially, and it's the same with any level of baseball, really. But like especially when you get to college, minors, and pro, the opening day lineup's awesome. It's so cool to see that first lineup card come out, who's batting where, all that kind of stuff. It's never the last lineup of the season. It's just not. It's just not. They will find wherever they need to put guys. If you need to shift somebody from 4 or 5 to 6, if you want to get like some more speed at the bottom of the lineup so you can turn the lineup over, get guys in that 8-9 hole to kind of continue on and get you back to the top of the order. All of that will figure itself out. And Paul Maneri is one of the best coaches in the country. He will figure it out. Now, that being said, having a guy like Ethan Petrie as like the cornerstone infielder, right, at first base, and then also being a guy that's like let's just call it what it is. I'm not trying to jinx the season or anything like that, but that's a guy that's going to finish this year. Let's just go on the low side. 280 with 18 plus bombs. Like that's what we're going to be in store for. That's a guy you can just plug in the middle of your lineup and let him go to work every single day. Huge. Now, the big thing I thought was the pitching. And that's probably the one that probably stands out the most. Dylan Eskew is a guy. I was telling you the other day how excited I was about this. Just a big dude, like a long frame, jump out at you. 5 innings pitched. Every starter went 5. I think that's by design. I'm trying to find the pitch counts here, but every single one of them went 5. Every single one of them also struck out 9. I mean, that's really good. That's really good, guys. And I'm not trying to say that Sacred Heart is not a great team. Doing that against air is really big. So to get that start from the weekend, because I think the question was never going to be the lineup. I know you had a ton of turnover, especially from the second base, shortstop, and third base positions. And you also had a ton of strikeouts. We talked about this last year. I believe it was 31% of your overall at-bats at those positions were strikeouts. You don't have that this year. You should be better at that. But the question, I think, coming in was the pitching. And from what it looks like so far, that's a really big deal. That's a really, really good deal. Now, I will say this. The other big part of that I really liked, now I'm just talking strictly, let me talk strictly about the 3 starters. You had, all of them went 5 innings pitched, all of them had 9 strikeouts. Between the 3 combined, you only had 1 earned run, you only had 1 walk, and you gave up a total of 4 hits. SQ gave up 3 of those, right? So between Becker and McCoy, they had 1 hit given up combined. Now, all of the numbers itself, like from the weekend, you gave up 4 total. Wait, what the hell? No, I'm sorry, 3 total earned runs and 4 walks. Now, 2 of the earned runs and 3 of the 4 walks. So 2 of the 3 runs and 3 of the 4 walks. They were both given up by the same person, Tyler Pitzer. Obviously, not a great start for him, but for everyone else on this roster, by all means, a really, really good start from the pitching staff. Like that's just huge. I'm going to be going back to Columbia tomorrow. So when you hear this, probably Monday morning, and we'll be there for the next 2 weeks. I will definitely get out to Game Founders. We'd love to see you guys there, and say hey and all that kind of stuff. But I think this is going to be one of the most fun parts about the spring, because obviously men's basketball didn't go great. We got spring football coming up. Women's basketball will still be in contention. We all know that. Maybe they're about to go on a run. Okay? Not the first time we've seen a Gamecock team lose 3 games and then figure it all out. Happened earlier this year in football. But I will say, I love just looking at the stat sheet alone and the box score alone. Love what we got to see in opening weekend and opening day from South Carolina's baseball team. So that'll be all for today. I hope everyone has a great and fantastic rest of your Monday afternoon. Make sure you're listening to Locked On Gamecocks each and every day as your first listen. For your second listen, go give our buddy Chris Gordy a listen over there at Locked On SEC. Have a great rest of your day, like I said, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Go Cox.